you've seen the industry change where management companies come in and, everything keeps changing. It makes you guys so much different in the fact that you can keep that consistency.
We own the real estate.
Exactly.
Yes, and we partner with our mortgage lenders, and HUD being, a primary lender for us, and we were fortunate to refinance most of the portfolio less than 3% over a 30-year term.
Wow.
I know that we set on a very stable foundation. And so the fact that the Godfrey family owns the bricks and mortar and the operations, it's one phone call when we need to make a decision.
Welcome to the Answers for Elders radio show.
And welcome back, everyone, to Answers for Elders Radio Network, heard across the USA. And guess what? We are looking under the hood. What are the things you should ask a community before you move in? And one of the things that maybe the general consumer is not aware of how the senior living industry works. And so I am very proud today now to introduce to you the CFO of Chateau Retirement, Angel Averman, is it correct?
Yes,
and
correct.
Angel, I am it's an honor to meet you again after a long time when we knew each other when my little mama lived in this very community. At Chateau Pacific. And Angel, I know you've been with Chateau for a very, very long time. You came like when you were very young, and now here you are. Before we even start about the financial wellness of Chateau Retirement and all those things, I want to kind of get your perspective. Senior living has evolved over the years that you've been here. What are some of the things that you've really noticed in the whole industry as a whole?
I think that it used to be that the consumer was the resident. And today it's very well known and appreciated that the families are also the consumer, making choices for their parents.
True.
And we consider ourselves community-based, where before I think the approach to the industry was very much need-based, but where am I going to live next?
Yeah.
What's my new community? Where will I feel at home? And I believe our approach has changed over time. The chateaus as well as the whole industry.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I remember distinctly when I was taking care of my mom is my support network was you guys. And when she moved out or when she passed away, it's like I felt this loss of not only her, which was huge, right? But I felt this community. It was like they weren't there for me to rely on, after she was passed. And I think about that from years ago. I think that's changed a little bit now, that people are more recognizing of the family role and how that is involved, in supporting the family members. And but there's grief, there's all kinds of change, even if someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, with dementia, with the cost of care, the financial side of it, the emotional, all of the different types of things that families go through. And I think one of the things that's consistent is your culture. It's your community that is there for the family. Yeah.
I think that the family weaves into the fabric of the community.
Yeah.
So we have, high school age servers.
That's
up
so great.
to, we have a woman who works for us at our Bothell community who's in her 80s, used to be in marketing. So we look at it that it's a span of a lifetime, and we're joining the family, the resident in the journey. And you can look at each of our communities and they have a distinct personality. And that's not just because of the people working behind the front desk, that's everyone that walks through those doors.
Yeah.
And it creates the energy in the community. And you're explaining that when your mother passed, what that loss felt like. We deal with it on the other side, working with the employees who were bonded to the resident and the families and the loss that they feel.
Absolutely. It truly is like a tapestry. It's coming together where, this network of individuals that all had a piece
Yes.
in creating, that picture. And then having the ability as a community to recognize that is significant to me. And again, what we were talking about with Jason about how if management companies are coming and going, they may not totally recognize that history or that legacy that goes forward. How have you seen in your community how your legacy continues with that?
I think the tenure of the staff is a big part, because these residents who have lived here, especially the inaugural ones who move in when the building opens, we don't forget them.
No.
You'll stand in the hallway outside of someone's apartment and say, "Remember when Bob used to live here?
Sure.
And he was the president of the resident council." Those memories stay, and they become part of the tapestry that you refer to. And I think that the Chateau, because there's 2 generations of family in the Chateau, and the family members who have worked here in the past, and the grandchildren that have worked here, that continues. And we can point to a half a dozen families, employee families, where it's the mom and the dad, it's the kids, it's the grandkids. So that family element is there as well. Or we'll have a resident come in and their grandchild is looking for a job.
Right.
And we say, we'd love to have them.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's a community, and it's not the physical building, it's how it feels.
Well, and you're getting the ability to recognize, you have the ability to recognize that emotional connection.
Yes. Well, they need everyone who comes through the doors. You, the daughter, your mother, our team needs a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And that's what is rooted in these communities.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Angel, because I oftentimes talk to senior providers, every day. And I will often say to them, what do you think is the #1 question at the back of a prospective, family's mind when they come and meet with you? And a lot of times they'll say, oh, it's the cost. And I go, no, it's not. It's, can I trust you? Are you going to take care of my loved one? And I think that's the thing where we go back to culture, but it's also the fact of, yes, cost is a factor. Nobody wants to pay, a ton of money when care is expensive as it is. At the other end, one of the advantages of the history that you have, and as a CFO of the company, I know that Chateau Retirement, you guys are very reasonably priced for the amount of care that you provide. It's amazing. How do you do that? How do you keep it that way?
We are very technology forward. And we are fortunate to have a CEO who's willing to invest. And so you bring efficiencies along the way, whether it's a culinary program, in care, in finance, in marketing. And so if you can leverage technology so that you don't have someone mired in paper and head down, but they are face to face with a fellow employee, with a prospective family or the resident, that technology gives them more time, right? And it also reduces our costs. And I think some providers don't have the ability to make that investment, but for us, we see the benefit of, especially with the labor market coming out of COVID. We said we have to do this better, we have to be more efficient, and we need more face time.
Yes.
And that was...
Well, and I think the other thing, when you really look at it, is the longevity that you have.
Yes.
I know that in running a business, you don't think about it, but there are huge costs in bringing on new staff. I think they say it costs an extra 1/3 of their annual salary just to bring a new employee in.
Yes.
So if somebody's making $100,000 a year, it's going to cost you $35,000 to bring on that new employee. Because you have the longevity of staff, and because your staff is created, your culture is created that way, your turnover is amazing.
We invest in years of service.
Yeah.
So we celebrate that every year at the holiday party. And it's $100 for every year of service. So if you think about 350 employees and
That's
at the
incredible.
benchmarks of 3, 5, 10, and every 5 year after that, The idea being that it's not so much that we want you to stay because it reduces our costs,
No.
but the way that we train, the way that we develop employees, we can't get that traction if we're
No.
constantly turning people every 6
No.
months.
And that's the thing I think that's so important with that. And obviously you've seen the industry change where management companies come in and, you know, everything keeps changing. It makes you guys so much different in the fact that you can keep that consistency.
We own the real estate.
Exactly.
Yes, and we partner with our mortgage lenders, and HUD being, a primary lender for us, and we were fortunate to refinance most of the portfolio less than 3% over a 30-year term. So that's not,
It's amazing.
That's not the part of my job that keeps me awake at night.
No.
I know that we set on a very stable foundation. And so the fact that the Godfrey family owns the bricks and mortar and the operations, it's one phone call when we need to make a decision. And it's very nimble. We dance on our toes. I don't
love
have to
that.
call New York or California. It's real time, and Jim is not one who will dictate a decision. Tamara, much the same way. They're very invested in, what do you have to say? What do you think that we should do?
Yeah.
So there's buy-in across the table.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it's taking ownership.
It's
It's
taking
making,
ownership.
everyone that is involved in this culture to have this ability of, being mindful of, the costs, being mindful of how I can do this better and more efficiently, because again, they feel like they're heard.
Yes. And most of our suggestions come from our employees. And so, Jim's famous for saying, what's the dumb thing that we should stop doing? Right? And I thought, that's an interesting way to ask that question.
Yeah.
But he's truly interested in, you're the boots on the ground. What do you see that we don't?
Yeah. And I think there's all kinds of things that go on in senior living that people don't even think about.
Yeah.
So, obviously, if someone comes to visit Chateau Retirement, one of the things that really stands out to me is, like I said in the previous podcast, it's like walking in the door celebrating 25 years. To me, that is so phenomenal in this industry. You don't really see that very often.
Right.
And yet, you're prepared to go forward for the next 5 and 10 years forward. How do you envision financially and the expansion? Yeah, I know you're planning another community here in the next not too distant future. How do you envision Chateau growing?
I think we have to listen to the market. That we pride ourselves on that, and continuing to listen because it's changing. The needs of the resident define the need of the building. Right. So we have to develop in a way that is, you build a building and you think this is the way this is going to play out. But we have to be willing to add a wall, take a wall down. Sometimes people are seeking 2 bedrooms. Sometimes they want smaller, and they're going to be more conservative with the dollar. And just listening to the need. We can build a building that we think is beautiful, and if you build it, they will come. That's not our approach. What's the unanswered market need that we can respond to?
Well, and I think one of the things you're saying is very true. It's like, I would say the majority of families, yes, they want to live in a nice building, but they don't care about having to get dressed up for dinner every night. And they don't care about the fountain in the lobby, except for maybe the first couple of times that you walk in. And then it gets to be like, oh, well, I'm not dressed to go downstairs. I don't feel like, there's not that sense of being home. It's more of being, out. And I think that's one of the things that you guys, when we come into a community, at a Chateau community, there's this home feeling. It's like, it's that feeling of, I belong, I'm part of this community. And I think that's a big
it's a very
thing.
similar approach with the residents that we have with the employees. We don't want you to move in and then price you out so that you have to move on. And Jim believes in the preservation of wealth and capital.
Yeah.
He's very conservative at his at his core. And so he values that for the residents and their families as well. There's a cost to doing business.
Absolutely.
And we know that we could raise rents higher. We choose not to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's there has to be a value proposition for the longevity of a resident. We don't want you to move again. We want this to be home.
Well, and you mentioned something at the beginning of our interview, and I want to recircle back to that. And you talked about technology. One of the things that Tamara talked a little bit about was AI.
Yes.
And all the different ways in which technology can make you more efficient, but it also can help, because you're on the cutting edge of things, it can help cut cost in so many ways, but provide a greater mindfulness of ways in which you can do a better job. How do you envision that?
Well, I think, I have a front row seat in finance, and, there's the fintech world out there. So Sean Godfrey, who is our VP of IT, he and I work very closely together. So the more efficiencies that we can bring about in how we process resident billing, how we pay our bills. I have a team of myself and 2 others, and we do the work of what used to be 5 people when we didn't have the number of residents and employees that we have today. So again, leveraging the technology in every single department that we have is it gives you bandwidth. You can do it faster, more accurately, and more securely. We value the residents' financial information. That's key. You want them to live here a long time. You hear about the scams out there. We take their financial privacy very seriously. And I think that technology will only continue. It's not going to build a building for you, right? But I don't think it's the structure that is what makes us special.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Jason. What keeps you here?
Jim Godfrey. I was raised in a family construction business in Iowa. And I had been working in commercial real estate, and I took a pause and said, what's next? What's the industry that isn't going to go away? As I had 2 children approaching college, and I was looking for my next home. And I met Jim, and I sat across the table from him, and his values represented my dad's. And I said, I found it. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I have ultimate respect for him, and to work shoulder to shoulder with the owner of the company and the trust that he has placed in me. And we've seen real estate cycles and COVID and building buildings and putting pauses on projects. My voice has been heard, and I value that. I wake up every day happy to come to work.
And you came in 2007, so since then we went through a recession.
Yes.
We've been through all kinds of things, and COVID and everything. And what I am continuously amazed by is just the stability. And I will say that really confidently, that this organization has presented, to our seniors, to the families that are here in the Pacific Northwest. And, a lot of it, I would say, great, is that looking below the hood, making sure that you're asking the right questions, because there is a difference in organizations.
And I think the important thing that, if I'm encountering a family, when I'm working with a vendor, I explain to them, I'm not spending the Chateau's money. I'm spending the residents' money. And I take this seriously. I know what a Social Security increase looks like. So let's go back to the table and talk about that cost one more time, because this is not sustainable. And, we use that when we negotiate our contracts. We're very vendor loyal. So it's not just the longevity of the resident, the staff, it's also the vendors and our business partners.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, being a vendor to you, I am honored to be a part of your organization for sure, and it's such a privilege to be here. So Angel, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Did you know that you can discover hundreds of podcasts in our library on senior care?
So visit our website and discover our decision guides that will help you also navigate decision making. Find us at answersforelders.com.